What's up? This is Max Sinclair from Snowball Creations here yet again, and today I'm going to help you answer the question of which paid ad platform should you be investing in. So there's quite a few out there, and you want to make sure that you avoid wasting money and you want to get the right platform that gives you the best opportunity to skyrocket your business or snowball your business in the right direction. This is a question that I've answered so many times. It's something that's part of my job at the starting point with any relationship with a client. And then as time goes on, we might be changing their mix of their different platforms that they use. But ultimately, I've thought it through a lot over many years. And so there's a selection of 5 questions, which I'm going to run through now. Wow. Which should hopefully mean that you can avoid those kinds of risks of massive kind of wastage of money, investment, because ultimately paid ads is expensive, and finding the right one which really will give you an easier return on ad spend and so help to snowball your business going forward. So let's get into it. Hey, could you hit that like and subscribe button for me real quick? I'd really appreciate it. That's perfect. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Number 1, do you sell to other businesses or do you sell to consumers? This is the simplest starting question. If I was going to be on a call with you, I would have already looked this up. So if you're selling to businesses, that's B2B. If you're selling to customers, that's B2C. And so if you're B2B, certain networks are better for that. So the really simple thing to point out is LinkedIn ads. It's one of the ones that we love to use the most for B2B, but it barely really is ever used for B2C, whereas say Facebook and Instagram, they're a little bit mixed between B2B and B2C, to be honest. Like you can really do anything on it because it's so big. But I would say it's like a slight leaning towards B2C perhaps, if any. And then there's things like Google, which can do both B2B and B2C, but you would use them in different ways depending on your goal there. Number 2, do people Google to solve your problem? That sounds like a funny way of describing it, but it really gets to it, like, because everybody understands what Googling is. You know what Googling is. Googling. So do people search online in the search systems, which realistically is Google, to try and solve your problem? If they do, you should try Google. If they don't try Google. So generally the other way of looking at this would be, is it an inspiration purchase or not? So if people don't yet know your product or service or the problem you're trying to solve even exists, and they're not actively trying to solve that, then they will ultimately need to have some kind of inspiration to make that purchase or convert in some way. And so that's when you need to be using something like Facebook and Instagram or LinkedIn ads. And Google does have a display network, but it's not as effective as Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn are. So if you're ultimately trying to find new audiences of people that aren't yet searching to solve that problem, then Google is not the place to go. Number 3, is a visual element really kind of required or key to promoting your offering? So if it is, places like Google, they are again still relatively good. So there's things that you can do with image ads as an image extension, And then there's also the shopping section. So if you're doing e-commerce, you can show images of your products. Ultimately, though, the search part of it is much more limited in terms of the options available, and say like much more creative videos and things like that are not really capable. There's not much there available to you with Google, whereas Facebook and Instagram is unbelievable, the amount of options they give you nowadays. Like they help you to create it. You can A/B test it much more easily and in much more advanced ways. LinkedIn ads as well has really great options. They have messaging within like so many different varieties of different types of placements within LinkedIn ads. And really it's the A/B testing is especially well set up for trying out different types of creatives. And people are on there already consuming images and videos, so they're much more happy to be kind of scrolling through images and videos, and they'll respond better to it. Number 4, how big is the conversion for you? So this is really just the extremes can lead you a certain direction. So if you have a conversion that's like less than like £4, it becomes actually quite difficult altogether to really do any paid ads. It's something that if you need to be making a certain amount of money back to be able to profit enough from any form of advertising. Let's say, for example, you have an item that costs £2 and you make a 50% profit margin, so you make £1. So with that £2 to £1, let's say you convert 1 in 2 customers, which is pretty impressive. If your website converted 50% of its customers, that would mean that you'd have 25p left over to try to have to spend per click. So you'd have to have 1 click going into 1 conversion, going into 1 sale. Like it's ridiculously impossible. So these metrics and this system only really works most often when you have a higher average order value. If you have an exceptionally high order value, you're more likely to be in B2B or some kind of high ticket item sales, like selling jets or something. And so somewhere like LinkedIn actually can be a little bit better for that kind of world, I personally think. Google can really work in any place. Facebook and Instagram can work in any way, but one of the things to really consider about how big your conversion is if your conversion is very big, then you need to spend more to find out what works, because the average cost per click is going to be a lot more expensive. If you're selling jets, for example, and you're selling like, I don't know, £2 million items, then the cost per click is likely to be £10, £20, for example. Whereas if you're selling a £10 item, the cost per click is often more like 20p, because the market naturally leads to these cost per clicks, because somebody trying to sell jets, there's enough of a competition going on that it's equilibrated, whatever that word is.
Are you okay?
To the right level within that particular market. And in the same way, if you're selling a £12 item, like a collection of sponges, then you're going to need to you're only going to be able to make or spend a very small amount per click to stay profitable. So basically the market keeps this kind of imbalance. So if you have a really high like average conversion value, just remember that you're going to have to spend a lot more on your cost per click. So quite often you need to basically have larger budgets to be able to make that work. Like for ourselves as an agency, a cost per click can be around, say, £10, for example. So to do that, it's okay because we make a good amount of margin for each client that does go ahead with us, because they stay with us for a long time because they're generally happy. And so that's okay. But in other situations, it wouldn't be if you had a much lower order value. Number 5, what budget can you realistically afford to spend over around, say, 3 to 6 months without being confident that you're definitely going to make a big return on investment and become profitable within that time? It's realistically a long game, paid ads. You really have to be patient with it. You need to take your time. You need to be aware that the first month especially is just complete experimentation. There is no like goal whatsoever really to actually aim for a really strong ROAS in month 1. Month 1 is saying, let's experiment like hell. Like within our snowball effect, we have a model that we use for our clients. We have 2 phases. There's the experimental phase and there's the developmental phase. Experimental is we put 100% of the ad spend into testing. So we aren't saying if we have 4 ads that are running and one of them starts to do really well, we're like, okay, great, this one's doing really well. Let's test some new stuff on these 3 which weren't. And then we keep doing that and trying to beat the best. So maybe we've got a 2 times ROAS on one. This is like a 1 times, this is a 0.5, and this is a 0.1. We'll kill those 3 and try and beat that 2 times until we get generally over the 2 times ROAS. Is when we switch over to more of a developmental testing phase where we would reduce that amount of testing. But this is to sum up basically, at the beginning, you're going to do a lot of testing. And so that means that your ROAS is not going to be as good realistically, because you're always just throwing more stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks. So you need to have that budget available that you're not going to have to just turn off the ads after month 1, month 2, or even month 3 or 4, just because you've not yet hit even 1 times ROAS. We have many companies that start and they launch and they jump up to 2 or 3 or 4 times ROAS within like a week. Other companies, though, are not as established, they're not as strong, they're earlier in their business model generally and their product market fit. And so it takes us more time. So we need to be aware of this, and you need to be realistic about that. So the more money that you can spend, the more likely you're going to get results, but you also need to be able to spend that consistently over a good period of time. Hopefully this has been helpful for you. Hopefully kind of combining these 5 questions, which I will list them here for you so that you can see them all together and you can screenshot that. And get in touch at max@snowballcreations.com. If you want more of a kind of personalized recommendations, I'm happy to help. You can leave a comment with your business. And otherwise, I will see you next Wednesday.